Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is truly an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to have you all together with us tonight for tonight's class. Looking forward to it, God willing. Not to get political, not to discuss the news, but you may have seen today a scathing resignation letter from, I forgot her name now. I just saw it earlier this afternoon. A very Barry Weiss, who is a strong defendant of the Jewish people against anti-Semitism, how she resigned from the New York Times today. So on that note, I want to start with a story of the Rebbe with Mr. Charles Roth. Charles Roth was the executive director of the National Jewish Post for 29 years. He's in Yechidus, he's in a private meeting with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And very proudly, he tells the Rebbe that our publication is independent and completely objective. You should know he's telling the Rebbe that we're a completely independent newspaper, we're not biased, no agenda, etc. And the Rebbe responds to Mr. Charles Roth, independent, perhaps, but objective, there's no such a thing. It is humanly impossible to be completely objective. Every person has a bias of some kind. So let me ask you a question. Would you agree that every single person is biased? Do you think of yourself as being biased in any way? Earlier today, those who got the email, I sent out a question today. The question was, and we're not going to have feedback, but I want you to think about this question. Is having bias a largely negative thing? Or is there ever a situation or a scenario where it is okay or it is even good to be biased? So, for example, should a parent be biased about their children? And if so, is it good or bad that a parent is biased about their children? I'm sure you know all the jokes about the mother comes to the kid and says, to the school about her angel, my tatale. So parents very often are biased about their children. Is that a good thing? Is that healthy? Is that ideal? Or is that something negative? Should we be objective about our children? And hopefully you've thought about this. But this is, I guess, the quality of the upside and the downside of this virtual classes. We don't waste time on discussion. We go straight to the message that I would like to share with you tonight. Is that the answer is obviously yes, that we are all biased. And whether it's pun intended, if you're objective, you'll agree that you are biased. So whatever the reason, it's not relevant for tonight, whether it's nature, whether it's nurture, whether it's the way we're educated, every single one of us possess a lens. We possess glasses that frame and form the way we see ourselves. They frame and form the way we see others, and they frame and they form the way we see the world around us. It is not possible. It's not possible for us to be absolutely, completely objective and to erase any trace of our personality, to forget all of our past experiences, to forget about all of our deeply held beliefs and our perspectives and personality. Is not going to happen. And that's what the Rebbe was saying to Mr. Roth, that yes, you may be independent, and yes, you may be unbeholden to any particular ideology or any particular organization, but none of us live without bias. None of us live without bias. So whatever frame we adopt, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is something that it's part of us. And it very deeply affects the way we perceive reality. And so what we need to work on is how to affect, how to control, how to manipulate the matrix of our understanding to affect the way that we construe and contextualize and the way we interpret every interaction, every event, every experience of our life. That is going to be the discussion of the next 4 weeks. Now, as you all know, my worldview is very much shaped by the Rebbe. the Rebbe is my role model, my guide, my direction. And so obviously, I am very much impacted by the Rebbe's absolutely unbelievable positivity bias. There are countless documented stories and letters and anecdotes from the Rebbe's life and behavior that demonstrate his positivity bias and how it truly illuminated every dimension of the Rebbe's thought, of the Rebbe's speech, of the Rebbe's action, of his reactions, of his interactions. The Rebbe had an unbelievable positivity bias. For example, I'll show you one example before I go further. In 1977, on the Shmini Atzeres, the Rebbe suffered a serious heart attack. Serious heart attack. It's a very long story, many interesting details, not for tonight. The Rebbe refused to go to the hospital. He was in his room. On the night when Simchas Torah ended, a day and a half, a day after, 24 hours after his heart attack, the Rebbe insisted on being able to get a microphone, to get an intercom, and to be able to speak from his room on the speakers to the Hasidim that were downstairs in the main shul of 770. And the doctors refused to allow the Rebbe to talk and to exert himself and to take a lot of effort for the Rebbe to speak and to speak to the Hasidim, the night after his heart attack. And so the doctor was trying to convince the Rebbe that he should not talk to the Hasidim. So the doctor told the Rebbe that you need to take care of your health. And he said to the Rebbe, if you don't take care of your health, there is a 25% chance that you will have a relapse and you will suffer another heart attack. And the Rebbe wasn't convinced. The Rebbe still wanted to be able to speak and to be together with the Hasidim that had witnessed the Rebbe having a serious heart attack 2 days before. And so the doctor said, do you understand what I'm saying? And the Rebbe said, yes, I do understand what you're saying. What you told me is that even if I don't take care of my health, which I promise you I will, said the Rebbe, but even if I do exert myself and speak to the Hasidim tonight, there is a 75% chance that nothing will happen. You understand? I'm getting phone calls. I'm going to share this with Karina. Karina, if you're watching, I'm going to send you a phone call. I can't answer the phone now. Hold on one second for tech support. So, okay. So, this is the Rebbe's perspective. The Rebbe has a positive way of looking at everything. And obviously, this is very relevant living in times of Corona, where some people have allowed a panic and a fear to overwhelm them and overtake their lives. And that if we were able to apply the Rebbe's optimism to our own lives, then these things that we think that are problems could actually be revealed in a positive way, and to understand how negative experience can be positive experiences. God willing, next week's class we'll talk about developing what's called an ayin tova, how to see things in a naturally good light. And then the week after we'll talk about dealing with negative people and people that we view as problems in our life, or people that are harmful in our life, how to view them in a positive way, etc. But for tonight, I want to address the following issue. It is very easy for you that are watching tonight to say, but any story that you're going to tell me, that was the Rebbe. That was someone very, very special, very holy, someone unique. The stories of the Rebbe, and you're going to tell me that he was very positive, and when he told the doctor that after his heart attack that I can still be together with my community and to speak and to be one with them, that's a Rebbe. That's not me. That's not relevant to me in my life. So I want to make a very, very important observation or point, which is that the Rebbe did not have an easy life. The Rebbe did not have a life of peace and privilege. The insights that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight and for the next 4 weeks together are insights of a man who lived through waves of pogroms. He lived through the killing fields of World War I. He lived through a typhus epidemic. He actually lost a brother that died, a young brother that died because of the typhus. He describes the refugee crisis where his mother was feeding many, many refugees that were living in their home, terrible refugee crisis. The persecution of his father was the chief rabbi of the Nepa Petrov, and eventually the forced exile of his father by the communists, whom he would never see again, who his father and his mother could not even be at his own wedding. The Bolshevik Revolution, the rise of communism. He lived through World War II, where he barely escaped with his own life in the last ship to leave Europe with his wife, Chaimashka. His brother was brutally murdered. His grandmother was murdered. Many other relatives, his sister-in-law, his brother-in-law were murdered by the Nazis. And perhaps most painful of all, the fact that he never had children. Rebbe never had children. In addition to all that, the Rebbe heard the sobs and the cries and the stories and the pain. And he didn't just hear it. He absorbed and he internalized and he carried within him the crushing pain of hundreds of thousands of individuals who came to the Rebbe for healing, for comfort, for love, for acceptance, for help, for guidance, for blessings. Stories of people who were ready to commit suicide, who came to the Rebbe for no other reason, for a reason for them. So what I'm going to be sharing with you tonight, and for the next 3 weeks after tonight, are not just stories of a holy man that lived an easy life and that didn't have problems and said, let's be positive because his life was good. The Rebbe saw more pain and more suffering and more difficulties and more of the weaknesses of human nature than all of us watching combined. He saw everything. He lived through a life that Baruch Hashem we have not had to live through. And therefore, these are the principles of not of abstract theory, but of a person who lived a life of consciously choosing to always focus on in his thought, in his speech, and in his action on being positive. In fact, the Rebbe told Beryl Eunuch. Beryl Eunuch was the personal attendant in the Rebbe's home. So the Rebbe had all of the secretaries in the office in 770. And then there was a attendant in the home that helped the Rebbetzin, help with groceries, help with any repairs in the home, things like that. His name was Beryl Eunuch. He took care of the Rebbe's house. And once the Rebbe was talking to him, and the Rebbe told him that I trained myself. That's what the Rebbe said. I trained myself to always be positive. Listen to the next words. Because if not, I would never have survived. That's what the Rebbe said. I trained myself to be positive, because if not, I would never have survived. Ultimately, we all have a bias. We all have a pair of glasses that impact and frame whatever it is we see. And therefore, a primary focus of our life should be to constantly work on cleaning those glasses, on making the glasses through which we see the world cleaner. You might just pop in my head the famous story of this person who was always wondering, would look at the laundry of the person next door that hung up their laundry to dry, and she would always say, why does this person hang up dirty clothing to dry? Until one day her husband told her, the clothing next door is not dirty. Your window is dirty. Once she cleaned her window, she realized the clothing of the neighbor was clean, it was her window that was dirty. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to work on cleaning our own glasses. And this is the key point. The way I'm going to be structuring tonight's class and the other classes is not to be an academic study, not to be like a JLI class where we discuss a theory and we bring a lot of text and a lot of different intellectual, it's not going to be so much of an intellectual journey. It will be intellectual, but the objective is not to be an intellectual journey, not even to be an enjoyable evening of hearing some stories of the Rebbe's courageous efforts to design a life of positivity, despite all the dark and difficult times in which the Rebbe lived and had to deal with it. But much more than that, this is going to be hopefully a time in which we learn how to change the way that me and you and we each view the world. And therefore, in order to do that, before I go any further, I'm going to stop and I want you to choose something small, not a major life event, Think of something small that happened in the last week that bothered you, that made you upset. Something happened. They say that life's habits are changed by the small things. So don't think of anything major. Don't give me any major. My mother abandoned me as a child. No, none of those. Don't overanalyze it now. But think about. I want you to write it down. And if you want, if you're comfortable, text it to me. This way it can be private. This will hold you accountable, and I will share at the end of the class, without sharing any names, a few of the text messages or WhatsApp messages I get. We will come back to it. Share with me something small. Again, no life events. Something that was a disturbance, something that set you off track, that threw you off motion, and it made you a little bit upset. It made you upset. Remember, habits are changed not by the major events of our life, but by the small things. So I have something small that bothered me that's actually set my schedule off a little bit, and I will share with you. But if I get any comments from you, I will better share with you your comments, your perspectives, your experiences, and we will see by the end of tonight if we can change the way that we view those things that make us upset and bother us. So go ahead, write it down on a piece of paper if you don't want to share it. If you want to share it, text me or send me a WhatsApp message of something that happened to you recently that bothered you. Someone, says something not nice. Human interaction will be lesson 3. But, then I had to go to the doctor, whatever, something that happened to you. I'll share with you mine. My event is, I'm sure many of you already know, but some of you don't know. I was at a wedding last week that I had to go. I'm a rabbi, part of what I do for fun. I go to different events, and I was at a wedding, and someone at the wedding tested positive for corona. Which means that because I'm responsible and I care about my community, I'm not going to expose anybody now that I know that I was in contact with somebody that had tested positive. And so I'm in self-quarantine, which is the beauty about this class, that I can be in quarantine. Baruch Hashem, I don't have any symptoms whatsoever. My wife doesn't have any symptoms whatsoever. But we spent 3+ hours on Sunday. We found out Saturday night. Sunday, we went 3+ hours waiting online to get tested. We got tested. We're waiting for results. And it's thrown off my schedule, and there's certain things that even more for my wife are waiting for. So this was a relatively minor event. Baruch Hashem, I don't believe that I actually am sick, but it's an event that has been a big inconvenience to me. And that's what I'm talking about. How do we reframe the way that we experience life's events? That's going to be my event. I'm sharing with all of you. If hopefully by now you've written down something that has happened to you, that has bothered you recently in your life, please share it with me. I would love to be able to use some real life examples at the end of tonight's class. Okay, with that being said, let me tell you a story. Okay. Anyone having? 1 second. Someone just messaged me, and let me send this to our amazing assistant Karina that's doing all the tech support. Okay. A story. The Rebbe once received a letter from a businessman who, in the course of his travels, had encountered something that upset him. What bothered him? He was in a far-flung community. I don't know which community, somewhere far away, not in America or New York. And they came to Shul to say Kaddish to make a minyan, and they had a minyan, but the minyan was one of the people was sitting in the back seat of the back row of Shul reading a newspaper. The whole prayers, instead of putting on tefillin and praying, he was reading the newspaper. And this businessman, it bothered him, this blatant display of disrespect for a Shul, for a Chabad shul, whatever shul, I'm not sure if it was a Chabad shul, for whatever the shul, and he couldn't handle it, so he wrote, I guess it was a Chabad shul, so he wrote a letter to the Rebbe, complaint that how come in this synagogue they allow a person to come and to read the newspaper the whole davening instead of being involved. Let me share with you the Rebbe's response, okay? It is a beautiful response. Let me make this bigger so you can all see it. The Rebbe said to him, everyone, of course, reacts to an experience in a way that is closest to him. Thus, for my part, I make the following observations. First, I see in this situation the degree of Jewish attachment that one finds in every Jew. For here is a person who has wandered off to a remote part of the world and becomes so far removed, not only geographically, but also mentally, as to have no concept of what prayer is or what a house of God is, yet one finds in him that Jewish spark. Or as the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, expressed in his Tanya, he finds in him the divine soul, the part of this person which is truly a part of God. The divine soul seeks expression as best as it can, and in the case of this particular Jew, it seeks expression and at least enabling other Jews to pray congregationally. He therefore goes out of his way to help them, and at the same time, be counted with them. How is that for perspective? You come to shul, you see someone sitting in the back row reading a newspaper, you say, what kind of disrespect of the shul is this? Says the Rebbe, why are you looking at it, the fact that he's reading a newspaper? Look at the fact that this person has a soul that's yearning to be connected to God. But he doesn't know how to connect to God, doesn't know how to pray. He's living far away from a Jewish community, both geographically and emotionally, psychologically. He's not Jewishly aware of how to sit and pray properly. And nevertheless, not even though he does not know how to pray, he still wants to help make convenient. He's still willing to take off his time and to inconvenience himself instead of being home or in his office or wherever else he could be, to instead sit in the synagogue in order to allow for there to be a minyan. Look at the neshama. Look at the Jewish connection that exists in a person who is so disconnected, who still wants to be part of the service. This is the Rebbe's beautiful approach on understanding how this is not an arrogant Jew reading newspaper and services. This is a holy Jew in exile who is responding to God's call in the way that he knows how. That's one story. Now, the next story is a beautiful story, but instead of me sharing it with you myself, let me share it to you in the words of the
Dr. David Lukens is chair of the Political Science Department at Touro College. For 20 years, he served on the staff of U.S. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
My two best stories about the Rebbe and public policy, and I use them in class. I actually used them. I used the first one I used in class in American politics as an example. There was a woman in Brooklyn, college teacher, angry black woman named Shirley Chisholm. She got elected to the United States Congress in the mid-60s. She was a fiery speaker. She was considered a black power advocate. Whites were scared silly of her. And she was the first black woman ever elected to the United States Congress, and she was a bomb thrower. So the white Southern racists that ran the U.S. House of Representatives from the South said, we'll teach this blank a lesson. And they assigned her to the Agricultural Committee of the House of Representatives. It was a great gelächter, it was a great joke. I still remember the New York Times front page article said, does a tree grow in Brooklyn, question mark. They said, you know, the chairman, they've appointed Shirley Chisholm, not to housing, which she requested, not to a committee on poverty, but the Agriculture Committee. And when she retired from the House, I was there when she told the following story. She said she was very depressed and very upset and didn't know what to do. She got a phone call. The Lubavitcher rabbi wants to see you. And of course, she was the congresswoman from Crown Heights. She had helped win the election, the primary, with the strong support of Lubavitch. She had some very close relationship with people in the Crown Heights community, and she came to see the Rebbe. As he told the story, she had seen him once before when he had refused to endorse her. But then he said, everyone voted for me, so I guess he did something. She was very cute about that. She said, but then she came to see him the second time, and he sat down. He said, I know you're very upset. She says, I am upset. I'm insulted. What should I do? And he said, what a blessing God's given you. This country has so much surplus food, and there's so many hungry people, and you can use this gift that God's given you to feed hungry people. Find a creative way to do it. And she says the first day she came to Washington, she met a young congressman who's now a world-famous figure, Robert Dole from Kansas. And they started talking, and he said, our farmers have all this extra food. We don't know what to do with it. She said, 1 second, the rabbi. And what we call WIC and food stamps largely expanded. There was a tiny pilot program before. The whole existing food stamps program came out of the Agriculture Committee of the United States Congress, and Shirley Chisholm said in front of everyone there in Washington, she said, I owe this because a rabbi who was an optimist taught me optimism, taught me that what God gives, what you may think is a challenge, is a gift from God. She said, if poor children, babies, I heard her say this, she said, poor babies have milk, if poor children have food, it's because this rabbi in Crown Heights had vision.
Okay, that is an absolutely beautiful story. And now I'm going to share with you, this is the Rebbe's perspective on always seeing things in a positive light, always sharing things positive. The challenge is that science have coined the term negativity bias, which is a very common human phenomenon, which is basically that we have an ingrained negativity bias that ensures that we remember or we experience the negative actions or negative experiences of our life more powerfully than we experience the positive experiences of our life. It's, according to neuroscientists, it's a mechanism of self-defense to protect ourselves. Our brains have developed specialized circuits that register negative experiences immediately in our emotional memory so that we can learn from them. That's why, if I was to show you a big white screen with one little black circle in the middle, I don't have a board in front of me, actually this was an experiment in the class, what would you say you see in front of you? And almost everyone always says a black dot. And actually, I should have actually made a white screen and a black dot. They could have shared it with you, but maybe I could split it too late. Now I already gave away the what do people see? The black dot. 99% of the screen is white. So when I say I see a white board or a white piece of paper, it's human nature. The way our brain is wired is that we don't see the white piece of paper. We see the black dot in the paper, the one little speck of dirt. I'm wearing a white shirt. Imagine I have one little stain right here. I don't. Let's say I have one little stain right here. Usually he's wearing a white shirt. See, he's wearing a dirty shirt. 99% of the shirt is clean. 99%. Why is it a dirty shirt? Because there's one little thing here. All this part is clean. Yeah. But we don't look at a shirt if the majority of it is clean. If a little bit is dirty, it's dirty. And therefore, we use much more brain space to scan and to process negative experiences than we do to process positive experiences. Because it's a self-defense mechanism. Negative experiences can be fatal, they can be dangerous. So we learn to register, and when something bad happens to us, we learn from it far more powerfully. We internalize it far more deeply in order to be better prepared, to not make the same mistake again next time. Human nature. Here, reminds me of the joke of the son who goes to visit his mother 2 weeks after Hanukkah. So Hanukkah's mother had sent him a package with 2 sweaters. So of course he's a good son. He makes sure he's going to visit his mother. He makes sure to wear one of the sweaters that his mother had sent him for Hanukkah. He walks into her house. The mother gives one look at him and her face falls. So he realizes something is wrong. She says, Mom, what's the matter? What happened? And she says, what's wrong? You didn't like the other sweater that I sent you? Right? Some of us are very good at that. We're masters on fixating on the negative aspects of our lives and on the bad things that happen to us. And what's the problem with that? Although it's a good defense mechanism, is that we then forget the good things that happen to us. 10 things happened to you today. 9 were good, 1 was bad. What are you going to remember? Most of us remember the one bad things that happened. We're walking around like in a low-level state of hypervigilance and anxiety. And therefore, we blow the negative experiences out of proportion. And instead of contextualizing them and recognizing what they are within the bigger picture of all the positive aspects of our life, we get carried away on, we focus on that one black dot instead of on the bigger white screen. Now, before I go back to the Rebbe, I want to tell you that scientifically, it has been proven that people that are positive live longer. Sounds great, huh? People that are positive live longer. Look at this text over here from the BBC. It's a very interesting study. The theory is that optimists may find it easier to control. Did I skip a line? Yeah, that the researchers that pessimists could benefit from doing things like imagining a future where everything turns out well. Here's the study. The study used two existing groups of people recruited for different studies. 70,000 women in the nurses' health study and 1,500 men in the veterans' health study. Their levels of optimism were assessed, as well as their overall health. They were also asked about exercise and diets, as well as how much they smoke and drink alcohol. On average, the most optimistic men and women had 11 to 15% longer lifespan and were significantly more likely to live to 85 compared with the least optimistic group. While a lot is known about the risk factors for disease and early death, far less understood about what the researchers call positive psychosocial factors that could enable healthy aging. Okay. And therefore, because of this importance, not only psychologically, but even scientifically and for the health of a person, the Rebbe consistently insisted that we should change our experience by consciously focusing on the positive. There was an individual who complained to the Rebbe often about how terrible his life was. He was always, in his mind, he had a terrible life. Terrible life. The Rebbe sent him a powerful response. I'm going to read with you a letter. We've shared it before, but it's like one of those letters is like powerful. Listen to this letter, what the Rebbe tells him. The Rebbe says to him, in our world, everything is a mixture of good and bad. Human beings must choose which aspects they will emphasize, contemplate, and pursue. How instructive is it that which our sages tell us that Adam was an ingrate? Even before he was banished from the Garden of Eden, while living in a literal paradise, he complained about his circumstances. On the other hand, there were Jewish men and women who thanked and blessed the Creator and recited the morning blessings while living through the most horrifying times in the German concentration camps. Ultimately, everyone's circumstance will be somewhere between these two extremes. My point in saying this is not to admonish you, it is simply to underscore the reality that the type of lives that we live, whether full of satisfaction and meaning, or the opposite, depend in large measure on our willpower, which dictates whether we will focus on the positive or on the negative. That's a strong letter. Anyway, this is the key of what we are going to talk about tonight. How to change our perspective on life. And that brings us to one word. The word of tonight's lesson. It took me a long time to get to this one word, but the word I'm about to say is the word of tonight's lesson. Reframing. The word of tonight's lesson. The word you need to take away with you tonight from tonight's class to make this class meaningful and life-changing for you. Remember this word. Reframe. Reframe. I want to show you a few stories. There was a girl called Shendel Itkin. She was 14 years old. And her father wanted her to join, to go to a brand new Lubavitch Girls High School that was opening up that year in the neighborhood for Chabad girls. And she a strong-willed, independent, strong-minded girl, didn't want to go to the brand new school to have less girls, and she didn't want to feel like a test case for a new school. She wanted to go to the established Jewish high school that was not up to Chabad standards, but that's where she wanted to go. And she adamantly refused to go to the school her father wanted her to go to. So finally, the Rebbe, her father couldn't convince her. So her father said to her, you know what? Write a letter to the Rebbe. Ask the Rebbe for insight and direction. So Shaindel did, in fact, write a very bold letter to the Rebbe, and she concluded with the following provocative words. So she wrote a letter. I do not want to be a guinea pig. I don't want to go to the school and be a guinea pig for a new school. And I heard, she said the story. She said that, in hindsight, it was probably a little bit inappropriate to write this, and maybe I shouldn't have, but I was a teenager, and I was very, very independent in my thinking. And so I was adamant in my mindset that I am not going to go to the new school. A few days later, Shaindel receives a response from the Rebbe that completely changed perspective. The Rebbe wrote one word to her. Listen to this. The Rebbe responded to her with one word. Crossed out the word guinea pig. On the letter of her letter, he crossed out the word guinea pig. And over, he wrote the word chalutza, which means in English, a pioneer. Don't frame going to the school as being a guinea pig. Reframe the context. Be a pioneer. Be a trailblazer. Be a trendsetter. You tell a 14-year-old girl, I want you to be a pioneer. I want you to make something new. A pioneer. I'll climb the mountain. I'll forge a river. I'll do anything to be a pioneer. The Rebbe knew how to reach this teenager with one single word. With one single word. She wanted to be unique. She wanted to be different. And so instead of saying you're a guinea pig, you're a pioneer. And by the way, the Rebbe changed her life, because not only was she going to this brand new school and being the leading class and making it a successful school, she would end up, after she graduated seminary and getting married, going back to teach in the school, eventually becoming a principal in the school. And today she is currently the principal of the school of which she was a pioneer. I'll tell you another story. There was another rabbi, Ben Zion Wiener was his name. He was in the audience with the Rebbe. And he told the Rebbe something was bothering him for a long time. And I know someone watching actually can relate to this. He had lent his friend a large sum of money, and the friend had never paid him back. And it was bothering him. He did a mitzvah, he said no good deed goes unpunished. And he was very frustrated, not just by the money, but by the betrayal. That here was a friend that he had helped the friend, and now instead of, the friend was ignoring him and he lost a friendship. They say, how do you lose a good friend? Lend the money, right? So he said to the Rebbe, how could it be that after performing this big mitzvah and helping another person, that I should lose so much? How could God allow this to happen? It's not fair. It's not fair. So the Rebbe answered. Listen to the way the Rebbe frames this. Sometimes it is ordained from heaven that a person should lose money for whatever reason. They're not going to lose money. By paying a doctor's bill, by getting a speeding ticket. I never got a speeding ticket before, but some people have heard that there's some people get speeding tickets, some other kind of, God forbid, a misfortune. Yet, sometimes a situation where the decree is not even enforced, God can allow you to lose the money in a different, more kind way by doing a good deed and helping out a friend in need. The Rebbe is reframing the whole situation. Don't look at it that you lost money with tears, meaning you lost money, granted. But instead of saying that I lost money because I got into a car accident, God forbid, or because I had a medical issue, or because I had a leak in my house, my air conditioner broke, so I had to be all night without air. My brother, his air conditioner wasn't working. Imagine now, it's like 90 degrees outside, 94 degrees, your air conditioner breaks. So first of all, not only have to pay the money to pay the repairman to come fix it tomorrow, it will cost you 150 bucks, 200 bucks, whatever, but you sleep all night with a fan blowing on you and you're boiling hot and you're sweating. So the same 200 bucks, instead of losing it over an air conditioning repairman or over a flat tire, you got to lose it with a smile to do a mitzvah, help somebody in need. Share with you another story. You understand where I'm getting at this? The same exact facts, but how you view it. What's your perspective? That's totally different. I lost the money. But you could say, instead of God taking the money from me in a negative way, I lost it in a positive way. Instead of being a guinea pig, I'm a pioneer. This is the reason why the Rebbe was very, very into the words that we use. Very, very adamant that we have to always be careful to use good words. And the Rebbe saw great psychological impact in the words that we use. And there's literally 100 examples of words that the Rebbe would never call someone evil or negative, say the opposite of good. When he was describing things that were happening in society that were negative things. Please, and a picture also. A little bit of it. So for example, I'm not showing the interview, although I watched it. So the Rebbe had a big issue with the fact that in Israel, a hospital is called Beit Cholim. Beit Cholim means a house of the sick, or a house of healing. And it bothered the Rebbe tremendously. Why is it called a Beit Cholim, a house of the sick? Why is it not called a house of healing? A Beit Refuah, a house of healing. Because it's not just the word that you use, but to the Rebbe, it defines the whole perspective of the person. So this is what the Rebbe told Professor Mordechai Sham, who was the director of the Sheba Medical Center in Israel, said even though it would seem to represent only a semantic change, but it actually is the whole goal of the institution. Is the point of going to a hospital to be in a house of sick people, or is the point of going to the hospital to bring about complete healing? Meaning by changing the frame, by reframing the word that you use to describe the place where you're going, that already impacts the healing of the person. That already impacts the thought process of the person. And now I'm going to share with you, I hope you all follow me so far. I'm going to share with you a story now that is truly, to me, one of the most powerful Rebbe stories. I love the story. I know that I've shared it in the past, but I don't think I've said it in the last 5 years. I don't think I said the story anytime recently. I want to share with you an amazing story. There was I heard this, I didn't hear this directly. I heard this from someone, heard it from Rabbi Yoel Kahn. There was a yeshiva student who was not in a Chabad yeshiva, in another Litvish yeshiva, in which, in the Litvish yeshiva world, if you know the yeshiva world, there's a very strong emphasis on being a gadol b'Torah, which means becoming a great Torah scholar, It's a big push. You go to yeshiva and you study, and if you're successful, you can become a gadol. Gadol means become a great leader of the Jewish people, be a great rabbi, a great scholar, and being a scholar that's the ultimate. The ultimate success is to become a great scholar. There was a yeshiva student who unfortunately was not a brilliant student. He wasn't even a great student. At best, he was average, at best. And his whole life, he sat through all the classes and he heard all the inspirational speeches of the rabbis about becoming a great Torah scholar and the value and the beauty and the importance of being a gadol, a great Torah scholar. And he couldn't do it. And he wasn't stupid. He realized that he does not have the intellectual abilities of many of his classmates. And even though he's trying very, very hard, and he would work for many, many, many hours trying to understand the Talmud and the Gemara, he was barely doing good in his test. He was barely passing. And he saw that there was no way he would ever be a rabbi. No way. He didn't have the intellectual ability. And he was very, very depressed. So he went to the Rosh Yeshiva. He went to the head of the school to talk to him, saying, what should I do? So the Rosh Yeshiva tried to comfort him and said to him, you should know that even if you never become a Torah scholar or you never become a rabbi or a teacher, you could always go into business and you can be successful and you could support Torah study and you'll have the merit of the zechus of the Torah study in the merit of your donations of sponsoring the Torah learning. So although very well intentioned, and the rabbi meant to comfort his students, say, don't worry, it's okay if you're not a Torah scholar, you can still be a successful Jew and you can still be part of the merit of studying of Torah through helping and supporting Torah institutions. But it was very, very discouraging to the student because he had been raised with the belief that the highest achievement attainable is to be a great Torah scholar. And now you're telling me that I can't be what I always dreamed of being, and instead I'll support the achievement of others. It didn't work for him. He ended up coming to Yael Khan, a great rabbi in his own thing, and Rabbi Khan told him, you have to write a letter to the Rebbe. So he wrote a very, very deeply vulnerable letter to the Rebbe. Telling the Rebbe, I feel like a failure. I'm in a yeshiva where the ultimate objective is to be a Torah scholar, and I will never become a Torah scholar. And I feel like a failure. Listen to the Rebbe's response. Listen to this response. The Rebbe said to him, there's a Mishnah that says, Ani nivreisi l'shamash eskreini. I was created to serve my Creator. That's what I was created for. Which means that the whole goal of human existence, our whole reason for existence, is to serve God. And there's many ways to serve God. Some through Torah studies, some through charity, some through acts of kindness. There's many ways of serving God. How do we know what is the path that we are meant to serve God? Depends on what personality and what qualities and what talents and what gifts and what resources God gave you. So if God gave you intellectual capabilities, and obviously that's your way of serving God. If God gave you money, and that's your way of serving God, etc., etc. And our unique abilities that God gives us are our ways of serving God and reaching the path for which we were created. And then the Rebbe said the following. Here's the part that inspires me. The Rebbe gave this young yeshiva student an example of a full cup of water and a half-empty pitcher of water. So here is a cup of water, full cup of water. And here is a pitcher. Here's a pitcher of water. The virtual background is not helping us. Half, 3/4 empty, 1/4 full. The Rebbe asks him, "Tell me, please, which is more full? Which is more full?" Now, there's more water in the pitcher. I don't know if you can see, there's more water in the pitcher. But although there's more ounces of water in the pitcher, the cup, how big is this cup? I don't know, 8 ounces, 10 ounces, 12 ounces? There's less ounces of water in the cup than the pitcher. But the cup is full and the pitcher is 3/4 empty. The Rebbe, in that response, completely reframed the entire way the yeshiva student saw life. It reframed the way he saw his purpose in life. Don't focus on how many ounces of water you have. Don't focus on how much Torah study, how much Torah knowledge you have, or how great your scholarship is. Focus on your path in serving God and how full are you in what God gave you to serve Him with. So if God only gave you a 12-ounce cup and you fill up that cup with 12 ounces, you're doing a darn good job serving God to the maximum of what you were created to do. The fact that there's another kid sitting in class with you who's a brilliant kid, and he could have a quart or I don't know, 60 ounces of water, or whatever how many ounces of water could fit into this pitcher. And instead, he only, he barely pays attention. He gets 100. So he may have more ounces of water, but he's 3/4 empty. Such a beautiful way of reframing. How do I look at life? I say the cup's half full or half empty. It's not. Don't look at it that way. Look at it. Am I full to the maximum of my ability? So we're just on time. By the way, I'm not going to get to it tonight. I was planning on it. I said too much, and we're not going to have time really. But I'll just touch on it. This is why the Rebbe was a big fan of Viktor Frankl. There's a fascinating story where the Rebbe actually came to, where's lost my place? A fascinating story where the Rebbe actually sent a lady, her name is Mrs. Margarita Shazez, to go visit Dr. Frankl, who was in Vienna, and to encourage him to continue working, not to give up. And there's an interview, it's an 8-minute interview with Rabbi Yaakov Biderman, and God's willing, I'm going to send out this interview, the video, after the class, and the next email that goes out to those who are registered, I'm going to send out this video. I'm not going to share it tonight, it's actually fascinating, it's a powerful video, but I don't want to spend time, I want to spend time on reframing our own life circumstances. But basically the point is, should we just share the video? I'll just say briefly outside. I want to stay to the time we have. Maybe I'll show it after the class. The point is that she comes to Rabbi Yaakov Biderman, and she says to Yaakov Biderman, she knows that I'm the first Chabad Shliach to Vienna, and she says that she was once in the Rebbe's office in the early 60s, and she told her she's going back to Vienna. The Rebbe asked her to go to Viktor Frankl's home and to go and give a message of encouragement and strength, to know that the Rebbe is promising Viktor Frankl that if he does not give up and he keeps on doing what he's doing, he was the founder of logotherapy, that you will be successful. You'll have a breakthrough, you'll be successful. She came back to Vienna. She didn't have a phone number from him. She just goes, knocks on Viktor. The Rebbe gave her an address. She went to Viktor Frankl's home. She knocks on the door, and someone comes, and she wants to see the Dr. Frankl. And she insisted upon Dr. Frankl comes to the door. She said, I have a message from you from the Rebbe. Message from the Rebbe? Okay. So she goes sit down, and she tells Viktor Frankl, the Rebbe said not to give up, stay strong. And Dr. Frankl was very, very emotionally impacted by this message. I'm going to send this video out. You can watch the interview later. It's an 8-minute interview, and it's in Hebrew with subtitles. So I'm sharing it now. And the point is that saved his life, and he was actually planning. He had already filed papers to immigrate to Australia and to resign. If you don't know the story of Viktor Frankl was one of the students of Freud, but Freud had a very different philosophy that the core of a person is his sex drive and his id, and the theory of logotherapy. Have you ever read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning? So he was in the Holocaust. He actually argued that if Sigmund Freud would have been in the Holocaust, he would have changed his perspective too. The point is, he saw in the Holocaust how some people give up hope, but those who found meaning to their life and were able to frame their situation in a positive way, once they found meaning to their circumstances, they were able to find a way to survive and to live. The point is that the Rebbe's letter completely, the Rebbe's message to Viktor Frankl, which is why the Rebbe encouraged many people to read Man's Search for Meaning. The Rebbe encouraged other psychotherapists and psychologists to follow the teachings of Viktor Frankl, because this idea, and by the way, Viktor Frankl was a donor to Chabad. Yaakov Biderman didn't know this back part of the story until 1995. But Viktor Frankl every year would send a donation to Chabad in Vienna, just so you know. Anyway, my point is we have 5 minutes left. And I really said at the beginning of tonight's class, this is not an academic class. We are living in a time of tremendous negativity, tremendous negativity. I, in my life, have never seen so much negativity like I see today. Whether it's anxiety, whether it's extreme partisanship, whether it's hatred or libel for people that don't agree with us, whether it's the absolute venom and really childish the childlike behavior of people on Facebook and the way we talk to each other. There is tremendous negativity in the world today. Tremendous. The only way for us to survive, to thrive, is by reframing our experiences, by reframing our circumstances, by reframing the stimuli in our lives with a positive pair of glasses. And so it's very important to make this real. So all of you should have written down at the beginning of tonight's class something that recently happened to you that inconvenienced you, that made you upset, that bothered you, that made you unhappy. But now that we have established tonight that each of us has a subjective and biased way of viewing ourselves and our others in the world around us, number one. Number two, we established tonight that our personal bias is going to directly impact the way we perceive and experience what happens to us in our life. And that we established number three, that a negativity bias diminishes our quality of life. Whereas when we have a positive bias, it actually enhances and lengthens and increases the quality of our life. And by the way, I meant to say this before, but everyone that I know in their 90s are positive. There's people that come to the show that are in their 90s. They're all the happiest people you know. So anecdotally, I know this to be true. That if you have a negativity bias, your quality of your life is diminished. If you have a positivity bias, your quality of your life is enhanced. And therefore, so now that we established number one, that we have a bias. And number two, that bias directly changes the way we experience life. And number three, that if we experience life in a positive way, we'll live longer, we'll live happier, we'll live more fulfilled than if we live with a negative bias on life. And number four is that living a life of positivity is a matter of choice. It's not about circumstances. We define how we view the circumstance. So it's our choice. It's not our personality, it's our perspective. So therefore, instead of trying to deal with everything that happens to us in life, instead of trying to change the negative things that happen, there's no way that we will ever, none of us will have a life that's perfect, where everything goes exactly the way we want, where everything is exactly hunky-dory, exactly the way we want it to be. Every single one of us will have things that will happen that will seemingly be negative experiences or negative stimuli. What we need to do is to learn how to reset our biases. So let's look at our current situation. Let's look at what one example that we chose. And if you want to text me and you want me to, if you don't see how to reframe, this is the key word of tonight. Remember, the word of tonight is reframe. If you don't know how to reframe this recent event that happened to you, you thought was negative, how to see it in a positive light, please message me and I'm going to share it. We're going to try and do it together. If not now, do it afterwards. Call me, message me. We'll try and find a way. But every one of you watching tonight, to make this real, you must pick an event that happened recently. Not something small that you thought was negative. Someone didn't pay you back money. Maybe God was protecting me instead of losing money in a negative way, in a positive way. Someone wanted me to do something that's difficult. Instead of saying that I'm a guinea pig, I'm a pioneer. Instead of saying that I'm a loser, I'm a sucker, I gave in to them, say, I'm a kind person. I'll give you my example. I've been home. The truth is, don't tell anyone I snuck to the office for a little bit today. I don't know if she's still watching, but she knows. No one else knows. But I was home for most of today. I was home for most of yesterday. And guess who else was home? My wife was home. And we ate lunch together. And we talked a lot. I got up in the morning. I didn't go to Minyan. So we actually stopped the morning Minyan. the last 2 days, I got up with my kids, and I hung around with the kids, and they're going to camp, and so we're spending time with them, getting them dressed, and talking to them, eating breakfast with them, and a very, very non-pressured morning routine. So there's a negative experience that happened that I had to wait online. I'm officially in quarantine now, which for me is super difficult. But I'm deliberately reframing it to be I'm spending time at home, because the whole quarantine that happened for everyone else from after Purim, for me, never happened. That before in March, April, before Pesach, I worked so hard. Not good in my home, just saying in reality, I was barely home. I was working very hard. I would spend so many hours on the phone in that first month of Corona. I don't want to say I don't know how many hours I spent on the phone. Hours and hours and hours and hours just sitting on the talking to people and comforting people and encouraging people, working on Pesach, arranging deliveries, doing the catering, preparing the classes. I wasn't home. I was doing the classes in shul because I got set up at home to do classes at home. So I was home in shul the whole day. I wasn't home. So now I'm reframing what could be a negative experience, what could be an experience, I'm upset at these people, and how come I got Corona? How come I got exposed? And now that I have to do this, and it might impact what I'm planning on doing over the weekend. Instead, Baruch Hashem, I have time that I'm just being home. Much less pressure now, and I'm being home. If anyone else wants to share with me their experience, that they can think about how we can reframe it in a positive way, please do so. If not, it's already 9 o'clock, so we'll call it a night. But please, I ask all of you, think of something that you recently experienced and how to reframe it. If you want to share with me privately afterwards, I would love to get your feedback. I would love to hear your thoughts and to see how we can indeed reframe our thought process to be always in a positive mindset. Thank you very much, my friends. Thank you. God bless you all. See you guys next week. Same time, same place. God willing.